Hello and welcome to the PC Gamer Podcast. My name is Chris Thurston and today I am joined by Tom Senior.
Hello.
And Marsh Davies.
Hi.
Gentlemen, I've got a series of rapid fire questions for you.
Whoa.
Oh, good. We're always really good at those.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
brilliant at those.
Hot or cold?
Cold today, isn't it?
I'm hot actually right now.
Technically.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Can I go with no?
In or out?
In please.
Yeah, in.
Up or down?
Up.
Down.
Okay. The correct answer to all of these questions was Chris, stop trying to make us say Katy Perry lyrics at the beginning of the podcast for
no.
now.
Oh, I see.
apparently.
Fell into the trap
my
again.
extensive knowledge of Katy Perry.
Also, jokes from 4 to 5 years ago. Oh, well. Martin,
Hi.
you've been playing Antichamber.
I have. that's not how you usually introduce these things. I was expecting you to go, Martin, what have you been playing recently? And I'd say Portal 2
Look.
because of Antichamber, and it would be.
Oh, man, have I screwed up your intro?
Well, I've explained it now, so it's I think.
Do you want to start the entire
This
podcast?
podcast
again?
is over, gentlemen.
It's fine.
Like, we're about a minute and a half in. We can do it now without losing too much time.
Go on then.
Okay. Hello and welcome to the PC Gamer Podcast. My name is Chris Thurston. Today I'm joined by Tom Senior.
Hello.
And Marsh Davies.
Hi.
You've been looking at me with a look of terror on your face ever since I embarked on this gambit.
Yes.
Okay. Martin,
Hi.
what have you been playing?
I've been playing up to Portal 2. And the reason I've been playing up to Portal 2
He yells.
is because of Antichamber.
Antichamber, what's that?
Well, Antichamber is a Portal 2... Oh, God, this is going to be...
This is like a high school
podcast,
production.
isn't
It's
it?
really strange. Why are you both talking like that?
Okay, everyone breathe out.
I'm Limbo Man.
Martin,
Hi.
tell me what is Antichamber?
Antichamber is a first-person puzzler in the same vein as Portal 2, or Portal. But it doesn't have any kind of overarching narrative like Portal did. It's just a set of tests, basically, kind of lateral thinking tests. And it's set in this non-linear-ish set of white, austere rooms.
Antichambers, as it were.
Yes, and in fact, the use of the word anti there is not trivial, because in fact, these are chambers which do not necessarily exist within one's normal conception of Euclidean space.
It's hard to say.
They do. It plays with space a lot. So you go into a room, and turn around, and you're in a different room. That kind of thing. Maybe there's a frame hanging in the centre of the room, and you walk around the frame, and you can see a different room through the frame, and you go up to the frame so that it encompasses your entire vision. And when you pull back, you're in the room that you were looking at before. All this kind of clever stuff, it plays with those notions quite well. And there are things to recommend it. I mean, in fact, our reviewer really, really liked it. And there are the very clever bits later on, but I would have not seen any of that because I bounced off the game extremely harder than I've bounced off a game in recent times. And I think I was very uncharitable towards it. But its opening is probably one of the most divisive and potentially hostile pieces of game engineering I've encountered recently, because it relies so much on anticipating the player. And if it gets that wrong, you're liable to think that the game is just a bit of an ass, basically.
A bit of an ass.
A bit of an ass. So, like,
It's a new reviewing system.
Can I describe the first puzzle to you? Would that be?
I think that's reasonable. Anyone who doesn't want the first puzzle in Antichamber spoiled for them should
It's
skip
not
ahead.
a very good puzzle, anyway.
Okay, that's fine.
For reasons that will become apparent.
Then you're wrong and you should have it spoiled.
So you walk into this room, there's a big pit in front of you, there's a continuation of the corridor along the other side of the room, and above the pit says the word jump. So what the game thinks that you're going to do is you're going to try and jump the pit. And the pit's too wide for you to jump, so you'll fall down. And at the bottom of the pit, there's a sign saying, I can't remember, there's like some kind of piece of fortune cookie wisdom there saying something like, we fall down when there's nothing to hold us up, or something like that. That might be an annoying statement from later on in the game. But anyway, there's this plaque on the wall, and then you work your way around and you find yourself back at the same puzzle again later. And instead of saying jump, it says walk. And so you walk into this open space, and as you're walking across this open space, a bridge forms beneath you and you get to the other side. However, that is not what happened when I played it. because as soon as I got there, I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to make that jump. So I looked down over the edge.
You looked up at the sign, you went, no.
Well, no, I wanted to see what I was jumping into.
Okay.
So I looked down, and as I looked over the edge, this bridge started forming beneath me. I thought, oh, I see. I just got to walk across this. So I walked across it. And then I got to the other side, and I was like, but clearly they wanted me to fall down there. So maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm actually going to miss out a portion of the game, which is important to me. So I then went back and threw myself down the pit. And then the game seemed to suggest, well, you fall down when there's nothing to hold you up. And I was like, yes, I fucking know that. I worked that out already. So that whole thing is unsatisfactory. I mean, I question the entire premise of that. Because it's just misdirection. Like, I mean, if I go up to you in the high street and ask you for directions and you give me the wrong directions, what has transpired there is not a puzzle. that is just you being a bit.
I am not a trickster.
That is just you being an ass, like this puzzle.
Right? Yeah, I see.
And after that seems to me to be like, I can see what they're trying to do. In as much as it's the first puzzle in this game where space is not necessarily as it seems, so it's trying to teach you to look at the world around you and second guess it all the time. That's the kind of aim. But as a gamer, games mislead me accidentally so often that I come kind of primed with that instinct. Games. It's not infrequent that you find yourself going the wrong way, in inverted commas, in a game. And that's a bad thing. So you're always aware of this. And game designers spend huge amounts of their budget and time and staff and QA departments trying to focus players in this huge kind of possibility space on the things that they are actually meant to be doing. So to kind of disregard that immense art and skill that goes into crafting a directed experience for the purpose of kind of stroking their chin at it seems to be like a bit of a disappointment for me.
I haven't played it, but I also question the logic that says, I understand the idea of looking at a room and not assuming naturally that the same laws of physics or whatever that you would assume would apply, but a magic bridge seems to be a kind of imposition even on that. Like if you walked over the edge and then gravity shifted and you were walking down the side of the thing or something, then that would be something else in terms of rules. But I don't know. A bridge appears if you do the other thing seems a bit kind of...
It's a bit arbitrary, and a lot of the puzzles in the game seem to be more about you trying to guess what the designer has done. I mean, the thing is, the designer of any game is fully in control of your experience. It's no real great effort for them to misdirect you or subvert your expectations.
Yeah, you've completely at their mercy anyway.
Exactly. I mean, they could kill you the second you walk into the room, or they could blue screen your computer. And you'd be like, well, I didn't expect that. But I'm not quite sure what either of you would get out of that experience.
Yeah.
Positive way. And so not only to then, for the game to have this kind of slightly sadistic premise, I think, it wasn't even very good at it because it didn't predict what I did, and then it told me off for it afterwards.
Are those statements and those like... pictures on the walls and whatever, are they attached to a character in the game, like GLaDOS and Portal, or is it the game talking to you?
Not noticeably. It seems to be just a anonymous kind of authorial voice.
So the designer.
The designer of the game.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
And I think that they're not intended in any kind of smug way. Like, I think they're, after you've completed or failed a puzzle, for you to then share a comment or a joke with a designer almost, which acknowledges what they were anticipating for you. That, I think that's the kind of spirit in which they believe people will interact with those things. Whereas if you've already solved the puzzle, then forced yourself to fail and then been told off for it, that the nature of those comments seems to change, I'd say.
It's just a risky maneuver to assume people are going to play in a certain way, presumably.
Yeah.
Yes, I played the first few levels, and I did actually find it to be quite hostile. Like, it didn't feel like it was trying to create the shared joke about game design. It felt like they were saying, hey, look how well trained you are as a person who plays games and follows prompts from the designer. And well, how about fuck you for doing that? And just say, well, as you say, the whole premise of the game is that you're entering into the designer's world, their palace, and if all they're going to do is just throw you down a pit and then fuck with you and then go, "Whoa, now you're lost,
to my
aren't
ass
you?"
palace.
Yes. Welcome to the Palace of Ass. The time you have here will be ass. Look forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like-
it felt mean-spirited.
Sort of feels like that kind of you are but a rat in my maze thing, says
Yeah.
man who just sold maize to rat.
Yeah, I just feel like that.
Yeah, I don't like forced failure in games anyway, especially if they're going to be smug about it afterwards.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like-
we were talking about this earlier in terms of other kinds of game design, but I mean, force failure almost never works because you give players a certain set of power, a bit, or opportunities to succeed in every other way, and then you have to have the cutscene where you get rifle butted in the face or whatever.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that you just took a grenade to the face and hid behind a box until your health came back.
yeah. Rifle butt's the most deadly of all weapons.
Yeah.
There's no defense.
Just an instant neutralize a protagonist with a rifle butt. Can you imagine how terrifying a game would be where every enemy just charged at you with the butt of their rifle, and if they hit you,
They
you then
should
had
fire
to play
butts.
a lengthy sequence where you had no weapons every single time?
Throw myself down a hole. I think.
Yeah.
That'd be awful.
Voluntarily.
So have
walk
you
around.
finished Antichamber then, or have you?
No, I got bored about halfway through because later on I bought it before I've necessarily seen the conclusion of this puzzle, so I'm not quite sure it's as hostile as it appears. But there's one point where you need to collect something quite laboriously from one part of the level, and then you can use the things that you collect later on. But if you go anywhere else and you come back to that place where you used them, they've disappeared. They've reset. So you have to go and collect them again. As far as I can tell, maybe I'm mistaken there. But having just initially found that, I was just like, oh fuck off. I'm going to play Portal 2. And I played all of Portal 2, and I really enjoyed myself.
Had you played it before?
Yeah, I played it before, but it's long enough ago now that I've forgotten most of it.
Half the gags and stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing how much humour does and character does to kind of to help Portal get away with its weaker moments of level design or being kind of a dick sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's stronger in its like second part of that game. The first part, I think actually the narrative... They have a very successful narrative and very appealing characters, but I think they put that in competition with their core mechanics. So throughout the first part of that game, Wheatley's constantly saying, just another couple of rooms to go before you get to the next narrative kind of chunk. He doesn't actually say that because that would be stupid. But
That'd be ridiculous.
but he's constantly trying to hurry you through the thing that you should really be enjoying most about the game, which is playing it. That seems weird. Whereas in Portal 1, obviously, that was just the entirety of the experience. So it was much purer. You didn't feel like you were competing with some other part of the game, which you also wanted to see. But
I think
the
the puzzles are just better in Portal 1 anyway.
Yeah, that's
Portal
true,
2 falls back on, there's only a few areas you can put paint on
Yeah.
or put portals on or whatever. And
And they're kind of almost sniper sections where you're just staring up into this vast space and looking for the one panel that you need to shoot in order to progress.
Yeah.
And that happens quite a few times, I think, which is unusual for Valve stuff. They normally cut those.
And nothing blew me away. The portal gun is such a rewriting of your understanding of physical space that it is just scintillating to play with it instantly.
Yeah.
Whereas stuff that makes you bounce, kind of the same as a trampoline.
Yeah.
I have experienced them before.
what if you could paint a trampoline? What if you could see the movie Flubber?
Yeah, it's not quite as much of a mindfuck as the original
no.
game, and it falls short. Which is odd because there's lots of games which have come out, such as Antichamber, which do introduce new mind-fucking mechanics, and you'd think that Valve would have gravitated towards those rather than... I don't know if you played any of Dave Johnston, otherwise known as Smudged Cat's games. They're kind of small indie games. Did one called Gateways, which is like a Metroidvania platformer where you
I
can
haven't played
place
it.
portals, but it's in 2D. But he's very good at playing with time mechanics. So you create clones of yourself, which you then can't touch, and playing with gravity and things like this. And he's worked out, lots of his games are kind of iterative, so they seem to have the same puzzle elements in them repeated. But they're very comprehensive and interesting. I'm surprised that Valve didn't go for something quite as otherworldly as the stuff that he comes up with.
I suppose it's a question of accessibility again, and making sure people progress through that narrative. Because Sport was such a short experience, the first one, that I guess if you have the competing pressure of producing a 12-hour-long campaign, you can't have every puzzle be the potential thing you'll sit there and scratch your head for weeks at a time till you finally figure it out.
And Portal spends a long, long time like 'cause the portal gun is such an interesting way of fucking with reality. The portal takes a long time teaching it to you.
Yeah,
You spend a lot of time with just one portal, and then the other portal is pre-placed, and there are a lot of puzzles like that, and it's very gradual actually. If you go back and play the first one, the first 2 hours are just tutorial bits, and they'd have to do that all over again, while also teaching portal mechanics to people who didn't play the first game, and maybe it's just too much to do for in one 12-hour kind of session. Whereas paint that makes you bounce, it's obvious. You just look at it, and all they do is show something falling on it, and you instantly understand what it does and what it's for.
I think they shot themselves in the foot a little bit with the moon paint, the white stuff that allows you to place portals, because it breaks almost all of the other rules. Potentially, like if you've built your encounter area around the idea that you can't put portals in certain places, and then you have potentially the ability to put portals anywhere, then you've got to then add loads of controls to establish where and when you can use that other thing, and it ends up kind of piling onto these, I think, much more restrictive kind of puzzles that don't feel necessarily restrictive because you're spraying goo everywhere.
Yeah. It is, however, my favourite carcinogenic substance within a video game.
Yes.
On that long list.
Can we expect top 10 carcinogens?
PCgamer.com.
Yeah. Yeah, good.
So what does somebody else be playing? I've talked.
Do you want to sit in this chair?
Sorry.
Tom? I've been playing Half-Life 2, staying on the Valve
Oh,
track,
wow.
which is interesting.
Apparently I hear that's quite good.
It's rather good. It's still very good, which has surprised me. It's looking a bit aged, but it still feels fresh and interesting, because it turns out that people who make shooters just haven't used Half-Life 2 as a benchmark. It seems that only Half-Life 2 has really tried to do that type of experience, and everyone else is obsessed with Call of Duty and making a super linear shooter, and maybe that's much easier to do. But it was just refreshing playing a shooter where there's no minimap and there are no objective markers, and there is only one prescribed route through the environment, but you discover it, and the act of discovering it actually makes it feel so different to every other shooter that's been released since still. And it's one of the reasons why Half-Life 2 was so interesting. Half-Life 1 was so interesting because it guides you gently through its environments without pulling you by the nose at any point. And they're so good at anticipating the pace at which you'll move through those environments and pacing you with things like Ravenholm, which is so claustrophobic, and it's such a circuitous route through that environment. And then you know how to throw scares at you very quickly, and then you'll go into these wide open areas where you've got a vehicle and you're sort of like assaulting outposts, and it's much slower and more gradual. And the way that they mix those sections up and just lead you through it very gently, as though you're always discovering it yourself, gives you the sense of autonomy that is much more powerful than anything I've ever felt in Call of Duty or Battlefield or Medal of Honor or any of the billion other copycat shooters out there.
It's true, the way that space kind of dilates in that game continuously is still something you rarely see, pretty much. And it's always remarkable, except in its first instance in Half-Life 2, when it felt totally kind of just natural.
It's amazing. It's amazing that it's just a form of a great skill of game design. Really, it's a really skillful thing to lead a player without them knowing they're being led, and to have that illusion be so convincing. It makes the game feel different. It makes you feel like you're in that world as well. People constantly talk about immersion, but it feels like that comes from autonomy. It comes from this feeling that you're actually uncovering the world for yourself, even if you're not. And that's what Half-Life 2 does so brilliantly. And it's the way they kind of tap into tropes as well. So that, you go into the zombie bit in Ravenholm, and then you're out, and then later on there is the Call of Duty bit where you're doing street fights in City 17 with pals around, and it throws you in a scripted kind of airship boss fight every now and then. It kind of taps into all these things that other shooters do very well, but mixes them in to this whole that is beautifully paced and just really hard to stop playing, and full of character and humour. And it made me really miss. It made me think of what shooters could have been if they'd have iterated on that. They'd looked at what Valve had done with Half-Life 2 and actually built that instead of.
You mean Valve or other developers? In general?
Other developers.
Right.
Other developers. Yeah. I mean, who knows what Valve are doing with Half-Life now? It's been quiet for so long. But if other studios had looked at that and said, "Oh, we're going to create that kind of a similar experience," but brought a new spin on it, brought their own personality to it, it could have been. We could have seen so many awesome games.
Yeah, it's odd. People haven't looked at it structurally, really. Sorry, you were about to say.
I was going to say, what brought you back to Half-Life 2 after all this time?
I was thinking about Call of Duty recently, really, and what Call of Duty does so well, and why it's gone so wrong, and why it feels so stale now and so depressing. And why it's so depressing that so many because it's been such a tremendous financial success in the same way that World of Warcraft was for the MMO, that it just spawns these copycats. And that's why the MMO, people have this assumption of what the MMO is because of WoW, because of the fact that people have just iterated on that one idea so often. Whereas, similar things happen with the shooter, where it's just been Call of Duty instead, and you get this idea that these features have dominated because the market has decided that they're better, more accessible, and more easier to sell to the mass market. Whereas the actual quality experiences could be found elsewhere, things like Half-Life 2. That's kind of a depressing thing about the industry, really.
What's the best bit of Half-Life 2? So you mentioned the city streets there, but I never go back and play that part. I always stop.
Ravenholm is amazing. Like, it's also because it's just giving you the gravity gun. And that's a fucking amazing way. I mean, the great thing about Half-Life 2 is that the environment is so reactive to you. I mean, it's really contrived because they put explosive barrels everywhere and they have people standing on things that you can blow up and make them fall down. And it's just a big playground, really. But because the world is exploding and collapsing in front of you due to your action, it feels like you're so much more powerful. And Ravenholm is fantastic for giving you those saw blades. And it's just, they're in the most weirdest places. Yeah. You'll find them just in kitchens or just like you're in a sewer and, here's a razor blade, brilliant. But it's fine. It's fine.
Disaster struck City 17 shortly after the playground massive saw blade craze kicked off. Everyone had one, like yo-yos in the 90s.
Yeah. Who knows where they came from, but it's just so much fun to blow apart those environments, and they're just terrifying enemies with very good artificial intelligence. So you've got those horrifying black head crabs.
God, yeah, there's even the sound of those puts shit's right up me.
Brilliant. Brilliantly designed as well, because they've got the markings of a deadly mamba snake. So they're black, but they've got these little red stripes. So you kind of instinctively know that they're poisonous. And when they hit you, they reduce you down to 1 health, which makes it extremely dangerous. But it's the sound the way they make and the way they move is actually deeply psychologically terrifying as well. But the worst thing is that unlike the cute, adorable normal head crabs where you shoot them and they just fall over, these guys, they can take quite a few bullets, but once they've taken a few, they'll scuttle away and hide from you and hope that you forget about them. And it's that kind of little glint of, them trying to manipulate you makes them much more sinister and much more interesting to fight as well. And you see that the AI in Half-Life 2 is still quite basic, but no one's really done better. It's like combined soldiers, like if you're in a house and you're holding up against people, combined soldiers will strafe around the windows looking for angles on you. Just basic actions like that just elevate them above all opponents you fight in Call of Duty. Like, everything you fight in Call of Duty is a fucking pop-up. It's or you shoot a man and another man runs out of a door and takes up exactly the same position, and it's pathetic. Really, we could do better. Like, games have to do better than that, and it always feels like games should be demanding better. More people are saying, "No, this is actually shit." As a human being with advanced tastes, I find the idea of shooting a man who just does the same route every single time until I hit a checkpoint depressing, and I refuse to actually pay for this, and I'd rather have something better. Thank you very much. That's my rant for the day.
Quite right.
My favourite thing about Half-Life 2, in hindsight, and the thing I always think about when I think about it, is the sound design.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's what I always come back to. I think, and talking about creating a sense of space or illusory senses of space, or of places having kind of, a greater sense that they are real places that continue without you, and that there are paths leading off that you can't get. I think Half-Life 2 sound design does a massive job of selling that. Like, there's a lot of like reverb on its explosions, and it's really high-endy, like those kind of like really sort of sharp explosions, and there's kind of, and like the sound of a gunship crashing or something, like these sort of bellows that echo out across the landscape. Like when you're outside in Half-Life 2, it actually sounds like you're outside.
Yeah.
And very few games convincingly make outside sound like, the difference between gunshot going off indoors and gunshot going outside is really, really different. Like a gunshot outside is actually quite like it's a sharp sound. Like it's not this kind of thudding kind of.
It's like a firecracker going off.
Yeah. Like you hear this sort of piercing, resonant
crack,
sort of crack.
Yeah.
Like that's what a gun sounds like. And Half-Life 2 gets pretty close. Obviously, there are simulators like Armour or whatever that do the same thing.
DICE do a really good job with Battlefield as well. If you're firing a gun inside, it sounds so different to.
But there's something very specific, I think, about the quality of Half-Life 2 sound design that kind of, for me, always made it sound like also, that and the quality of its lighting. For some reason, they work together for me. Maybe it's just the way I kind of perceive things. But it's sort of the very kind of natural flat daylight and those kind of really kind of naturalistic sounds. Kind of, despite all the sci-fi stuff that's going on, it doesn't feel particularly like cinematic, if that's the right word. It doesn't feel like there's been like a Michael Bay sheen over the top of it. It's really kind of.
It's almost
it allows its fantastical elements to sell themselves. There's no kind of like crash zoom on encroaching alien monster or anything. It's it's just there, and you deal with it at your own speed.
There's something very restrained about the way City 17 is lit, isn't there? There's something very flat about that pale, slightly yellowy light that is almost unflattering, and that you conventionally would turn into an orange or a deeper sunset to create a more kind of cinematic scene. They seem to have resisted. Well, that's, I guess, Victor Antonov worked on.
Yeah, and Dishonored, which is one of the other games too,
Yeah.
have struck a certain thing. Dishonored's much more vibrant in some ways, but
Yeah.
it still has that really good attention to what cities actually are like.
Yeah, great.
So yeah, Half-Life 2, pretty good game. They say
Still fantastic.
12 years on.
Absolutely.
Jeez, 12 years.
So another one of those, please, about now.
Yeah,
I
come
saw
on.
a graph on Twitter that says that I think later this year, in October this year, it will be the biggest distance between two Half-Life games ever. Like we
growing,
will
hasn't
have the distance between Half-Life Episode 2 and now will be longer than the distance between Half-Life 1 and 2,
Right. Interesting.
which is sobering, you know.
I wonder if they're.
The thing is, I'm not actually desperate for Half-Life 3 or a Half-Life sequel of any kind. I just want Valve to make another shooter because they were very, very good at it.
really, really
Like, I don't
good
really
at
care
it.
if they come up with something completely new.
Yeah.
Like with Portal, or I just want them to make another
I want to see
first-person game. I guess.
I want a new game from Valve. Really, I mean, Dota 2 is great, but obviously they're working with something that's
Frog.
pre-existed them.
Yeah.
And Left 4 Dead was fun. I love Left 4 Dead. And they made Left 4 2, but it's been a long time since they've actually come out with something brand new. I guess was it Portal the last time? Was it Left 4 Dead? I can't remember when they were out. It's been a while since Valve have come out with
Left 4
something.
Dead 2 would be their own. Would be the last
Yeah.
in-house thing. But even then, it's not the same kind of directed kind of experience of being in a place. It's Left 4 Dead 2 is much more of
Yeah,
a
yeah.
packaged service almost.
What are they doing in there?
I don't know.
Who knows?
Who knows?
What have you been playing, Chris?
I have been playing a bunch of things. I went back into a dabbling phase, I guess, after a long time of only playing Dota. I still only play Dota, but what I'm trying to say is that I've attempted to fix my life and failed. But I did play a little bit of The Witcher over the weekend as part of a kind of little nascent effort to finally play that series, given them such an RPG guy, for me to have missed out.
The first Witcher?
Yeah, start from the beginning. A game I've almost finished once in the past. I think I've said on the podcast before. And it's really, really fucking boring. It is,
Yeah, first one's not great.
like and this is a dangerous feeling for I think anyone in this profession to have. But I got about 2 hours in and sat there and thought, there are so many more edifying things I could do with my life. and it's only simple things. And I understand the game gets much better at this, but I've realized that I just don't have the tolerance for like really ham-fisted NPC exposition conversations anymore. Like it's gone from being something that I'll listen to and go through and listen to and think about something else and think about what I want for dinner and whatever and get through, to being something that like I now find aggravating. In that, like at the beginning of The Witcher 1, it finds every possible opportunity to tell you about this faction of non-humans, elves and dwarves, who are basically terrorists or rebelling against the humans. Called the Scoia'tael, or Squirrels. And the game obviously needs you to know this information because it's going to be central to the plot later on. Sorry, excuse me. When you're let off the hook for the first time, it doesn't know that, it doesn't want to just tell you that in a cutscene, because then it plays its hand a bit too strongly with regards to what the plot's actually going to be about. So the cutscenes are about something else, and then you go off and you meet lots of characters, all of whom may have some small tangential connection to this group it really wants you to know about, and all of whom will tell you about them when Geralt asks the same question every single time, which is, so who are the Scoia'tael? And it's like, I know the first time. Like, you're talking about we need to be better at, AI and there's obvious things, but this is such an obvious, like, writing error that it kind of cuts through the whole thing, where you get so used to games where it's okay for your character to ask the same stupid questions over and over again without changing, that you get into a situation where part of your brain thinks, I want to play this game, I want to hear the story, so I will ask the questions that are made available to me, and I will mine out all of these dialogue trees for stuff. And on the other hand, all the game is giving you is the same information repackaged again and again without any of that experience actually having an impact on the way your character addresses the world. And I know it's an older way of doing things, and it's, which was by far, far from the only RPG that does it. But I can't just, I quit almost mid-conversation. It's so out of character for me, but it was just like, no. And I went back to playing the other thing I've played a lot of, which is Devil May Cry.
I like that.
Because I was like, I actually want to do something enjoyable that reflects me as a as a player of games and a solver of challenges now. And so I went to play the new DLC for Devil May Cry, which all it does is put you in a room full of escalating monsters forever. And it's like, that's what I'd like. Please arrange for me to have an enjoyable treadmill now. I've got half an hour to spare, and I'd like to spend it pressing buttons in a way that I find enervating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a positive experience, sort of on a net kind of way. But yeah, we should talk about DMT, actually, because you've played it as well, Tom, haven't you?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's fantastic.
I thought it was great. I had no grand connection to the series. I enjoyed the previous games, with the exception of 4, really, which I thought was a bit pants.
Yeah, I agree.
I had no real connection to the fiction because...
no one has any.
Because
Surely,
no one,
this is what surprises me about
a man wrote a petition to Barack Obama to have Devil May Cry, the new one, banned for disrespecting his choice as a consumer, to have Dante be a guy with white hair who says, I should have been the one to feel you're so alive. And yeah, so that's the thing that happened. But genuinely really impressed with the new one. Like, also, I hadn't been that impressed with Ninja Theory's previous games. They're a British developer who've only made games for the PlayStation 3 so far.
Yeah, they
I think.
Heavenly Sword.
Enslaved came out on 360 as well.
No, not Heavenly Sword. Was it Enslaved?
Heavenly Sword, then Enslaved.
Yeah, okay.
And I've always thought their games have been really pretty and have had lots of really amazing facial animation and good mocap and stuff, and some interesting writing things. They work really closely with Alex Garland, who's the guy who wrote 20 Days Later, I think.
Cool.
And The Beach.
And The Beach.
And the new Dread film.
And the new Dread film, which
nice.
was good.
Yeah, it was good.
But I've always found the actual games a bit kind of Uncharted-y and unsatisfying. But DMC is a proper Devil May Cry game with proper combos and...
Yeah, I love how faithful it is to the series, because I fell in love with 3 and obsessively completed it on all difficulty levels and played as Virgil and all that sort of stuff. And it's the great thing about Devil May Cry 3 was that you had these 4 distinct fighting styles. So it was always a very linear experience. You're always going through from chamber to chamber and having these fights, very contrived fights where the walls would, the doorways would be blocked off with glowing red barriers until you'd killed everything, and then they'd magically disappear for no reason, who knows why. But it was fine because the combat system afforded you so many different ways to destroy the enemies in that room that there's an element of creativity to it. So I always liked the trickster style, which was about massive mid-air dodges, which you could just blink basically from one end of the room to the other to avoid attacks and then counterattack. And then there's a brilliant one called the Royal Guard, where basically Dante just walks around and does the entire game topless. And the entire style is about blocking, taking things on the chest with precise timing. So if a blow comes in, you do a kind of, you press a button that does like a chest thrust, and if you hit it perfectly, that blow doesn't hurt him. It just stores the energy in his being, and the blow reflects. And once you've powered yourself up, you could just unleash this special abilities to obliterate everything. So it's all about just being this ridiculous
chest bumping madness.
Yeah, a dude who just walks into the middle of combo and goes, nope. Oh, I've got enough energy now. Bam! Everyone's dead. And it requires so much skill, but it's such an entertaining way to play at the same time. And what's great about the new Devil May Cry is that it works all those 4 styles into one control scheme. So you've got dodges, and you've got an angel dodge and a devil dodge. Now the angel dodge is trickster style because it lengthens the distance.
You teleport a short distance away.
Exactly, which is exactly like trickster in Devil May Cry 3. Whereas the other one is about precise dodges, where so if you dodge at just the right moment, your follow-up attacks will grow in power, and that's Royal Guard from Devil May Cry 3, essentially, under a different name and a slightly different form. But they've the ability to cram all those different ways of fighting into one control scheme and just drop the lock-on button as well makes it really, really... It just makes you be more creative in fights because you can access any of those skills at any time. And also, it runs beautifully at 60 frames per second, looks fantastic, and sounds great as well.
And sold fuck all.
Sadly,
such a shame, yeah.
But a great game, really cool.
But like and there's also lots of clever things, like the way it realizes that, to be honest, the actual mechanics of inputting button combos isn't actually the interesting thing about them. What's interesting is the way you chain them together,
absolutely,
and your ability to hold all your options in your head at any one time.
Definitely,
that's the trick, right? It's knowing that if I switch to this weapon now, I can pull this guy up from the ground and switch to this weapon to keep him up in the air.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. The actual mechanics of inputting those commands are the least interesting thing. That's the rote learning side of it, which, to be honest, I don't find particularly interesting. It's a skill, certainly, but not creatively interesting. So it standardizes them. Pretty much everything is either a series of regularly timed button presses or 2 button presses followed by a pause, and then another series of button presses for most of the weapons. There's some exceptions, but then the way that's done is if you tap twice and then wait, the animation is timed such that you will then see the weapon and it will always glimmer when the correct pause has been entered. So if you know what to look for, it's actually really hard to fail those. And so you get the much more satisfying experience of successfully chaining one move into another straight away without having to do like an entire playthrough of the game just learning what length of pause is and what's, how you cancel out of one thing and into another thing, whatever. I'm really impressed by it. And which didn't say nothing about actually the kind of awesome job they did on the look and story and everything else about
surprisingly, cohesive. And
because, like, I didn't know that I wanted to play the game where you fly into a upside down demon television to punch Bill O'Reilly in the face
until it happened.
Until I played the game Devil May Cry. Like, I mean, I knew I probably wanted to do that, but not in any kind of. I wouldn't have worded it in that way. You know what I mean? And but like the sound design is like. Again, actually talking about sound design in Devil May Cry is phenomenal. Like, it's not only kind of, so it's got like a layer of sound which is just whacks and thumps and slashing noises and kind of gunshots and monsters going blah. And then on top of that, because the soundtrack is so kind of, it's sort of really noise heavy and kind of like sort of pounding dance music and dubstep. Some of those abilities have like this extra layer of kind of like sound design on top of them. So there's like a ground punch thing with a really heavy fist weapon that sounds like an amp has just exploded. Actually, like when you hit the ground, as well as the crunch of stone or whatever, you hear this noise that honestly sounds like a valve amp overloading.
Yeah.
And it completely plays into this like rock and roll aspect of the game and the kind of...
It's so metal, isn't it? Like, Devil May Cry is the most metal thing to ever happen.
But actually, I think that's the difference, right? Like, old DMC is really metal in a way that carries with it some of the embarrassing cover art of like that kind of LP. And New Devil May Cry is much more like sort of dubstep or like darkwave and sort of like electronic music, right? It's possibly embarrassing for similar reasons, but from a different angle, right? Like it's the way it wants to present itself is as like this kind of filthy, grimy club, as opposed to the kind of big gothic cathedral kind of thing. Like you spend maybe 10 seconds of Devil May Cry, the new one, in a gothic place. Everything else is kind of like warped, real life environments, clubs. The nightclub level is amazing because the way the music builds and builds and builds over the course of this nightclub, which kind of you walk in, and because of its central conceit is that there's the real world and then there's the demon world Limbo, which kind of exists in parallel with it, and Dante only fights in so he's walking through the real world, then you'll find him slipping into Limbo, and then that's when the sword appears on his back. That's when he's kind of Dante properly, and that allows him to do loads of stuff with the environment. But because those environments are just what the demons kind of want them to be, if you're hunting down a demon in a club, suddenly the walls blow out and a huge logo flashes on the screen that says, isn't it Devil's Idol or something? Like, it's an American Idol joke. Like, and it turns into a game show, and everything sort of ripples back and the music builds as your progress through the level builds and stake builds. It's really, really good. Like,
yeah, it's good. It's so sad that it's done terribly poorly.
I think the other thing, the final thing I would say about it in sound design is I think there's been 2 games recently that have slightly reclaimed dubstep in games for me from being the complete laughing stock, right? Of like every trailer and every shitty shooter trailer where it's completely out of place, where, every sort of modern warfare game that has repackaged shooting insurgents in the desert as like, something that you can stick Skrillex over the top of. And one of them's Devil May Cry, and one of them's Far Cry 3. Because Far Cry 3 has that, like, shouldn't be brilliant, but is I've got a flamethrower and I'm listening to Skrillex moment. And Devil May Cry has it kind of throughout. And I think it's for the same reason. This maybe was a bit of a vaunting point, but they're both games where it's okay to kind of enjoy the violence of them. They don't try and punish you for doing... I mean, Far Cry 3 does later on, but a lot of that game is about actually he really gets a kick out of this violence thing. Just taking that part of the story without the kind of looking at my hands aspect of
what
it.
have I become?
Yeah, exactly. Also, there you go. We don't get through an episode of this podcast without making fun of Far Cry 3. But with that in mind, right, part of its trick is, and it uses dubstep to illustrate the bit of it that his secret enjoyment of just straight up murdering dudes in the jungle. And Devil May Cry likewise uses it because despite what happens in the story and despite Dante's different reasons to fight people, the thing that's never questioned is that Dante actually really fucking loves doing it, which is great. Like, if you want to talk about the issue of video game violence and how you present video, obviously it's super abstract in both cases, to be honest. It's more so in Devil May Cry. But, like, it has no embarrassment about the fact that that's its content. It doesn't feel like it has any need to kind of like comment on it and go, isn't it really terrible that he just punched that man so hard he blew up and then jumped up into the air and then used a grappling hook to find his mates and then slashed him a million times and shot him with a gun, like in real violence. Like, it, because it doesn't do that, it kind of, it feels like almost like a holiday from the rest of the industry, which is obsessed with finding ways to make us feel bad about.
Your words are making David Cage cry right now.
David Cage is always crying.
David Cage loves emotions, and the more emotions I can make him feel. Yeah, and weirdly for me, that's reclaimed dubstep as the quiet anthem for games that don't
enjoy
give
themselves.
that enjoy themselves. Yeah, it's the I don't know what this says about real life, but it's the soundtrack for just not really giving a shit and enjoying that it's okay to be angry sometimes, like you are allowed to fly into a giant television to punch giant Tron Bill O'Reilly. That's okay. That's all right, Chris. That's okay.
For the purpose of legality, is it actually? It's not really Bill O'Reilly.
No, it's
right.
not. It's Bob Barbas who presents Raptor News, who does a phenomenal impression of Bill O'Reilly. It's a studied impression of Fox News commentator. Bill O'Reilly.
Carefully, legally studied.
Carefully, legally studied. That I endorse as an act of parody only. But what an act of parody. Yeah, that's what I've been playing.
Sounds pretty good.
Badass.
Yeah.
Maybe I should play that.
Have you played it?
No, I haven't.
No, you should.
There you go. Why is everybody so down on Destiny?
I'm not.
Oh, Bungie's new project?
Yeah.
It may or may not be on
seems to
PC.
be- Yeah.
I thought
PC.
the bit of quote wrangling that led to that Bungie hates the PC
Yeah,
news story that flew
that
around
was harsh, wasn't it?
was wait, did we cover it? Did we cover it in that light?
No,
Oh,
we
okay,
covered
got
it
it.
saying,
Yeah, that was bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
I just wanted to be careful before.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, there was a lot of stories going around saying that Bungie had said that they'd basically superseded PCs and that nobody plays with
If you look at that
console
full quote-
with keyboard and mouse anymore. But he didn't say that at all.
No,
Not even-
like,
not
the
even
full
slightly.
quote was he was making a point, admittedly, a self-aggrandizing point, but
Yeah.
that because Halo had sort of really pushed forward with things like only being able to carry two weapons, regenerating health. It was shields initially, but kind of regeneration system in place of health packs. Although obviously Halo 1 had both, and not full, and then as a part of that whole thing, being playable on a controller, that it had fundamentally changed the landscape of how people make shooters, which is completely true.
Yeah, I mean, fair play. It is true.
That was then taken to mean no one will ever go back to using a mouse and keyboard, which was such a small subclause in what he actually said. But anyway, so yeah, ignoring that, I'm really excited about it. I mean, Bungie have made some of my favorite shooters ever, and some of the cleverest games ever. I think they don't get enough credit for things like ODST.
I think people were perhaps down on it because they didn't have enough to say about it or work with, really, because they showed some concept art and said that it was a shared world shooter and then didn't explain what that was very well. And so no one really knows what it is. So people are going out there to see it and coming back with very little. And that in itself is just frustrating.
Yeah, I can understand that.
for
I mean,
writers.
I completely agree with that. I think it's not enough. Like,
They did say a bit more about how it's structured. I mean, it seems like you'll go out in groups of 6 into instances, possibly open world instances, and then they may allow you to encounter other groups of players at the same time, and it's kind of fluid.
Is that again?
but I
That's
mean,
No idea.
when you've got a new idea, you've got to be able to show it. I think there's no better way of communicating it. Like, it's if it does work and they're so proud of it, show it in action. Like,
Yeah,
I understand
Or wait.
that there's
I mean, E3's around the corner, and if you need to wait a few months to put together a proper demo of what it's actually like, then wait until then.
I
Or
wonder,
do it.
because they are working on a sci-fi shooter, whether they also wanted to pip Infinity Ward's upcoming sci-fi shooter to the mark, because that's
Interesting.
going to be...
Is that this year, do you
revealed
reckon? Because they've said on their site, it's like, was it 2014, 2015, something like that?
Well, I read in some news today, they released a blurry screenshot of it saying, we'll be at E3.
Really?
Suggesting that
Interesting.
they'll do more than show a blurred
I'd be really,
screenshot of
really
E3.
interested to see what those guys have been working on, because, yeah, like, the first Call of Duties were pretty good.
I think Bungie possibly should have been a bit more aware of how much information had gotten out. I mean, obviously they are aware of the leaks that happened last year with regards to what Destiny was and what the story was, and those leaks subsequently turned out to have been accurate. with regards to the background. So they, I think, possibly needed to acknowledge that in the presentation they gave and give more as a result, right? That might have been always the plan. Like, they'd probably planned months in advance, 6 months in advance. So, okay, around this time in the spring, we're going to give away some story information. We're going to reveal the scope of the game, and then we'll save the rest for E3 or whatever. But when that leaks 4 months ahead of your thing, you've surely got to change the plan a bit and give more, because otherwise everyone goes out there and we already know that it's about a space ball that gives people magic powers, he said reductively.
Sweet.
Yeah, I know. But I'm totally on board with it.
Yeah.
Like, I think there might be a tendency on PC and from a PC audience to dismiss Bungie because Halo has, I think, unfairly become the... maybe for a long time it was the poster child for consoleized, a kind of word I hate, but the consoleized shooters. Call of Duty is that now, I guess. But
yeah, but I wish that Halo was. Again,
because
Halo AI in Halo was good. Yeah, it had loads of different enemy types with different ways of attacking you, and they recognise that what they do is they build good AI and they put you in an open environment that is also beautiful and interesting, and then you have really interesting firefights for people, and that's actually the game. The shooter aspect of it is far better than Call of Duty.
Yeah.
I'd rather more people riffed
it's a
on
much better game. Like,
yeah.
I mean, actually, in talking about creating a sense of a world that exists without you, like, I think if you want to talk about any game that really desperately attempts that, in terms of just a shooter environment, which is still reliant on you linking relatively linear combat sections.
Yeah.
Halo ODST, which is a spin-off of Halo 3, has ideas in the design of its hub city, it's all set in one city, that on paper sound like kind of game jam, kind of sort of super indie kind of one-offs, using indie as lazy shorthand for adventurous game design.
Yeah.
But like the fact that the city, which is controlled by an AI that can't communicate with you directly, can't just tell you things, communicates with you dynamically by flashing road signs and stuff like that. So if there is an ammo cache around the corner that you might miss, the road signs start pointing towards it, which is kind of awesome, right? This sort of sense that you're not alone, or that you're interacting with a system that is in the game world rather than, as you say all the time in Call of Duty, a icon that appears above a character's head telling you to follow them, or a mission objective that leads you exactly by the nose. Like, more games developers should be praised for trying to bring those things within the game, and that's something Bungie do very well.
I feel like I've played the same mission over and over again. It's the mission in Assassin's Creed 3 where basically you're playing join the dots across the landscape, and you're riding a horse down a pathway to the blob, and then it gives you another blob slightly further down.
It's Paul Revere's Midnight Ride, isn't it?
Yeah. But there are quite a few missions like that, and you just see the similar design popping up over and over again. And I hate the word lazy, but it's just unadventurous. It's just not, there's better ways to have the player spend their time than following blobs around the landscape.
Yeah. It's not a game. It's like a bad museum or something. I don't know how you would define it. Like, what exactly is your job then? To kind of curate an experience, or
I'm not sure.
Like, you wouldn't accept a movie that if you had to get up and change screens every 5 to 10 minutes, and your chief interaction with that mode of storytelling was walking between, concession stands in a cinema or something. Like, I don't know.
Horse Parking Simulator 2012.
Yeah, exactly.
Bring it.
You can actually just abandon your horse because you can magically summon a horse at any time. It's one of those rules
sneaks
about.
up
It's one of
behind
those rules about horses.
Magic Horse Parking Simulator 2013.
I would totally play that. Shall we do questions from the Twitter?
Yeah.
Bring it. Slightly confrontational there.
Yeah.
Do you mean that?
That was
the tone?
that was the least confrontational thing.
It's
In terms of delivery, not confrontational.
No.
Content, perhaps. James Breen. Well, there's a lot of Half-Life 2 kind of hovering around in this podcast.
Yeah, there is. Weird. Maybe Valve have released the nanobots
Yeah, exactly.
ahead of another
Tom
reveal.
is sublimating into Half-Life 3 as we speak.
With pleasure.
James Breen asks, what do you hope happens to Vigil Games?
Darksiders.
Who are the Darksiders guys?
Well, I think what's happened to them has already happened to them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I certainly didn't hope for what happened.
No. Some of them have been given careers elsewhere, haven't they? They've been absorbed into Crytek, a new branch of Crytek in the same city. So they probably won't be working on Darksiders again, because I think the license to that game is being sold separately to the company by THQ. I don't know what the latest was in it. I know...
I was following it a while ago when THQ... I mean, to clarify, if you're not aware of the background to this, Vigil made Darksiders games and were one of the studios that didn't find a buyer when THQ went bust. So kind of huge shame really, because I think they were one of the, those games were great. And
Yeah, very underrated. Like kind of overlooked. People just like some games just don't demo very well sometimes, and people just may have just looked at the Darksiders game and say, "I know what that is. Not really interested." Oh, it's Kingdoms of Amalur. No, it isn't. It's actually very nicely paced and third-person adventure. If you like Soul Reaver, play Darksiders. It's that kind of continuation.
Interestingly, one of the Platinum developers, people who make Bayonetta and latterly
Metal Gear Rising Revengeance,
which is the best name for a game. He was tweeting that he'd be interested in acquiring the Darksiders IP. But I mean, there's obviously no confirmation that any kind of.
I would love Platinum's Darksiders.
That would be amazing.
I mean, to be honest, I want Platinum's anything.
Yeah,
yeah. I don't know those. I mean, Platinum are great at those kind of beat 'em up games. So obviously, Darksiders could stand to improve on its combo stuff. But in terms, they've never made a pseudo open world kind of Zelda-like hub game before, which is what Darksiders is essentially. So it's not a perfect mix, but that would be an interesting group of people to acquire.
They did make a game where you ride a motorbike up the side of a skyscraper that's also a spaceship in order to fight God. So therefore, they can do anything they like, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, I'm convinced. Yeah. Although, I mean, to be honest, the actual IP of Darksiders is probably the least interesting thing about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I do like the guy who voices Death and being able to say this is no place for a horse, but I don't think they've probably not copyrighted.
Speaking of magic horse delivery,
yeah,
I must go all alone. This is no place for a horse.
Excellent.
I love the suggestion that it's kind of like the seedy part of town where you wouldn't take a horse.
We are in a kind of castle built out of skulls.
Someone wouldn't like it.
No.
It's only a death horse.
Yeah, it's a shame that it's not a shame at all. It's brilliant that the button for making him say that is so close to the button for hitting in person that it emerges in the middle of combat, every other combat. It's just like, this is no place for a horse. Bang, bang, throws a man through a wall.
He's just angry at all the skeletons for creating a non-horse safe skull castle.
Yes. So we hope good things.
The bottom line is we hope they find gainful employment elsewhere. And
I hope that Crytek doesn't just use them as a kind of talent farm and actually gives them an actual property to work on by themselves. That's my ideal hope for them. That's interesting ideas.
A solid wish. Cow Juice says, if you could have a game based on any film, book, or TV series, what would you choose and who would you want to make it? You guys are going to need a moment to think about this.
Question. Altered Carbon by Richard Morgan. His only good book. Is it Richard Morgan? Is that his name?
Guy wrote Crisis 2, right?
Yeah, Morgan. I'm sure Morgan is his second name. Anyway, Altered Carbon is a cyberpunk detective story about people who could be sleeved into different have their consciousness sleeved into different bodies. And so whodunit, except it's a whodunit about finding the consciousness, whatever body it might be in, as you chase. And there's lots of brilliant chases across the cyberpunk landscape. It's a really cool idea, and it could be an entertaining game. I don't know who I'd get to make it though, or what sort of game it would be. It's just a nice universe. Consider Phoebus, Ian Banks, a culture game. That'd be nice.
What as a kind of 4X kind of style?
Oh mate, play as one of the brains, the cybernetic brains running the culture. Yeah.
Staying with the sci-fi theme, the Night's Dawn trilogy by Peter F. Hamilton. It's kind of like an unwieldy series of sci-fi novels. Each one is probably big enough to kill a man if you dropped it on them. But it has this idea of it kind of feels a bit hokey to describe it like this because it turns out to be such a massive revelation in the book. But basically, the dead come back, but they start possessing people's bodies who are still alive, and then they have kind of.
Oh, I've read this.
But it's kind of got an interesting setting because it starts off as this kind of hard sci-fi thing on this kind of newly colonized planet, and I think the way that the plot unfurls would be an excellent kind of.
That's so surreal. I really want to. I think it's massive spoilers. Is it spoiler to say that Al Capone comes back in that? Is that right?
I guess so, but let's go for it.
It's just
loads of people from history suddenly turn up,
and they have this ability to corrupt the environment around them and kind of drag it back into the past. So you have Al Capone in a spaceship, but the inside of it looks like the inside of a Cadillac or a kind of really posh limousine from Chicago in that era. And that would be a really interesting place to explore, and those characters would be really cool as well.
Don't know how it would work mechanically.
No,
really.
no idea. But again,
Who would make it?
God, I don't know. And there's nobody out there who would be able to make that game, I think. I don't know, maybe if it was a quite controlled experience, then the makers of Dead Space could probably, it's a similar kind of genre, they could probably have a crack at it.
There's dead things in it. It's also in space. Dead
in
space.
Fact, they crib quite, I think they crib quite heavily from Peter F. Hamilton for some of the kind of background lore of that. So it figures. I don't know, what about you, Chris?
I would go for The West Wing, made by Telltale.
yeah,
Walking Dead team.
yeah, that'd be cool.
So using the kind of episodic adventure game, really character-driven, dialogue-driven, not use thing-on-thing style adventure game, but all about conversations and relationships and holding on to knowledge and actions and
Arguing tax with the Republicans.
reputation. Yeah.
Making big
But
speeches.
where you play as like a political advisor.
Would you have to like
the White
mash
House
X
for
to
a-
walk really fast down a corridor?
Yeah,
or
exactly.
something?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I think it would be brilliant. I've just finished watching the Netflix House of Cards series. That's possibly why I'm thinking about it. House of
Okay.
Cards would also be a good basis for something like that. But I like the idea of like just playing like a staffer or something in some kind of congressman's office, and then sort of through a series of a series of adventure games, moving up through periods in history and periods in the lifestyle of in the lifespan of an administration, answering phones and shit. I don't know. What? Escott asks if the PS4's blocking used games feature. Hang on.
Does it just end? Is that it?
No,
Is that the question?
I think it's a typo that has thrown
Oh.
me entirely. Is the PS4's blocking used game feature in the least bit good for Sony? And will this make the Steam box more appealing?
Steambox? What Steambox?
Okay, if the
thought the Sony had denied that it would block used games.
that's the first point, they haven't confirmed that it will actually block used games. It's heavily rumored for both of the new consoles, but
Well,
yeah.
I thought actually Eurogamer had asked them a direct question, and Kaz Hirai himself had said that it would not. But
we'll confirm
maybe
that.
I'm-
We'll confirm that in the show
yeah.
notes one way or another. But like, yeah.
Worrying of true.
Awful if true. And also, I think there's an irony in the fact that you can't have used games on a console, making a box that only plays games for service where you can't have used games at all.
Yeah.
More appealing, any kind of Steam box or even small PC that sits in your TV and just hooks up to your Steam account. Yeah, I mean, it's an issue that hasn't meaningfully affected PC gaming in many years, if ever. Very few places, even back in the day, were willing to sell used games on the PC, back when you could potentially write things to the disc and they couldn't be liable for what might actually have been put back in the box and sold on shelves. So, I mean, would blocking used games be good for Sony? No, because it accounts for a lot of people who play games on console. Yes, in that it would probably help them have a better relationship with publishers, maybe. Martin?
Don't feel one way or another about it, really. I don't. It depends. I mean, how heavily streaming services become used in the next decade or not. It might be something that is kind of immaterial eventually, because none of us will be able to play used games because we'll be streaming them instead
Yeah.
at some point.
Or simply downloading them.
Yeah, and that's not going to happen immediately. But this is kind of a short-term problem, I think, probably for Sony. I mean,
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Tom, you have any thoughts on...
No, I have a massive problem with the used game market because it doesn't grant profits for the products to the people who actually made it, and it's directly. It feels like retail doing something very naughty, and them protecting their interests in that way. It seems reasonable to me. Though it would be a shame because I played a lot of used games when I was first getting into gaming, because games are so expensive that
Yeah.
I would get most of my games secondhand from my mates and borrow them and play them, stuff like that. So in terms of like gaming culture, it would be.
Yeah, I mean, it would seem insane to cut down on whatever benefit you get from people being able to lend each other games and replacing it with some kind of, you can stream it for free now, but you'll have to pay sharing system that I doubt anyone will ever want to use.
yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Gaikai's remote kind of pad swapping stuff works. Whether you need to have, I mean, you might be able to share a game with somebody who doesn't have the game.
Yeah.
You might be playing it, and then you might be able to stream your game to them remotely, and they may be able to jump on. That seemed to be one of the promises of David Perry's speech about Gaikai's technology. But it all remains to be seen. A lot of this stuff just isn't going to come in immediately anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Craig McCormick asks, this is kind of linked to what we were saying earlier, are you concerned that Valve are becoming less of a games developer and are focusing on things like Steambox and peripherals?
Hang on, so this Steambox thing, like we've heard so many conflicting things about this now from Valve in various situations. They have a stake in a company that's making a Steambox-like thing, but they're not actually making one themselves. Is that right, Martin? You were at that conference that they did in...
Yeah, well, it wasn't clear what the actual conclusion of it was. I'm reticent to say too much about it because I don't know whether I was under NDA at that point.
Fair enough. Well, we'll think about that.
I mean, but the point is, yeah, so, like, to be honest, and as these recent layoffs of Valve have kind of shown, we don't actually know what's happening inside Valve at all. Like, we know they're working on VR stuff, but that's only because that's the stuff that they've chosen to talk about publicly at the moment.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like every year Valve roll out one side of their business that they kind of do speeches on about at GDC, and that they are kind of willing to expose to scrutiny. The making of Portal 2 really was last year's in a big way. They rolled out Chet Falizek and Eric Walpole and got them to talk about the writing of the thing and the design of the thing, and that was kind of, they were happy to talk about that. They were maybe a little bit open with Counter-Strike Go as well. But this year it's Michael Abrash talking about the challenges of getting virtual reality to work. But there's they're a big company with a lot going on, and a major business in Steam that it's kind of hard to tell exactly how they're distributing it's impossible to tell how they're distributing their resources internally. I would...
one would like to hope they're still making games somewhere.
I would certainly like... So are we concerned? I think it would be an enormous shame to lose the talent that produced games that are still, like, not bettered in their field 12 years on. Yeah. At the same time, I think they're doing a lot of, in some ways, really progressive things with the way games are distributed on PC, and in the way, now that Steam has sales every single day, pretty much, whether it's a weekly or a mid-weekly or a weekendly or just a daily sale occasionally. You start to solve that problem. We're talking about with that. There's going to be people who have access to better and more games through that now than I think would rely on who would otherwise rely on a secondhand game market or whatever. Anyway, and developers who are directly profiting from it. So
it's interesting because Gabe Newell's been talking a few speeches recently about some of their ideas about how a games market should work or could work, and he's talking about player-created stores for Steam and things like this, where people create compilations and implies that people will somehow take a cut of things that are bought through there. So giving people an opportunity to endorse content and sell it to each other, and bringing back this friends recommendation style way of selling games, rather than just having this marketing thing where gamers market to gamers instead of it being this third-party publisher effort. And he's also talking about things like almost a betting market that tries to predict how well things will do, that gamers can buy into and kind of say, oh, this Call of Duty will do better than the last one, and they can predict the market themselves, and there'll be incentives to that, and it gives people a way of predicting what games are thinking, what gamers like, and they've clearly got huge ideas about what the marketplace could look like in 5 or 10 years' time, and it looks very different to how it is now because it's run by the internet,
and it looks very different to other companies' projections are the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the App Store model or the Microsoft model that is super controlled.
So I was thinking very carefully about that. But there's about 200 people at Valve, aren't there? So, and there's no way they're going to stop making games. I mean, there are so many game designers there. There's no way that those brains would, like, the whole point of Valve is that they have this open system where people can work on what they want and form groups and create this impetus, and the natural impetus of most of the people there will be to make games, and there's no way that they're not. I'm certain.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's even the solution. That answers the question in a way. Like, what is happening there is that the reason we haven't seen a Half-Life game for so long is because most of the people there feel that they've made their Half-Life game, and now they're more interested in whatever it is they're working on, or the leaked stuff, that the spaceship art that came out a while ago, whatever that was or might be or is. Like, there's plenty of I'm happy just for them to kind of, I think they've earned so much goodwill through a bunch of stuff, and lost some for other things, but that I'm kind of willing to kind of let them do whatever it is they're going to do. I think if we go another 5 years without a serious sort of full-length first-party release from Valve, then you have to stop considering them a games developer, really. just a company that manages services like Dota and Team Fortress and Counter-Strike, and Steam, obviously. But yeah, I wouldn't say I was concerned necessarily.
It's funny, they've always been, in the dark ages of Valve's maturation as a company, they were very resistant to the idea of really taking or developing Steam at all. I remember many news stories about, I think I even interviewed Gabe ages ago, and he said, look, this is something that really Microsoft should be doing. We don't really want to be distributing games. It's not, we've done it because it's necessary to us as a business at the moment, but we'd rather other people took it from us. And they've kind of given up on that resistance now, and they've kind of acquiesced and said, okay.
Yeah, reluctant philosopher really king. Good at it.
Yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. With Valve's, the way that Valve pick projects and the way that they staff up and their fluid no job titles thing, you could see it would be possible for that company to kind of just get organically subsumed into a company that ends up being more interested in business than it does in games. Because at the end of the day, with a peer review process, if the majority of your peers turn out to be really interested in business, then the game developers are probably going to get short shrift. They're not going to be considered as useful by the majority. But anyway,
you'll end up with a bunch of phenomenally talented indie studios suddenly materializing in and around Bellevue. Yeah. Okay. William Heyman asks, you are in the pub. Your favourite game character walks in and orders a drink. Who is she or he? And what do they order? Tom's making a paralysed face of pain.
Face.
Or
or
a happy pain.
This is trying to summon all of the video game characters.
I know, it probably wouldn't be my favourite video character, but there's sure bet Max Payne would be right in there.
What would he order?
Oh, every fucking thing.
Mix into one.
Pour it into my face. What is he saying? Scooping up bottles from the counter.
Sideways.
Yeah.
Raz from Psychonauts just pops into my head.
He's not old enough to drink.
I know. I love the idea of him just sitting next to Max Payne and Payne just kind of throwing this booze down, and Raz is there with a glass of milk or something. Someone goes, is this Ricera?
Genuinely, I really hard to think of a favourite game character.
Are there any good game drunks? What other drunken characters are there?
Loads in The Witcher.
There's a lot. Everyone is drink all the time. Actually, we talked about this on the weekend. The solution possibly to my earlier Witcher problems is playing the entire game while a little bit drunk. Which I might try and embark upon. God help me.
It's quite a long game. You may just get liver damage.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I'm not actually. No, I wouldn't seriously recommend you do that, children. Nor do I seriously recommend you fly into a television. I don't know. Like, I'm conscious of avoiding BioWare games in this statement in my head because just getting drawn into that kind of like favorite character thing, and you get drawn into actual characters that you've enjoyed the writing of.
What would your Captain Shepard, Commander Shepard? Sorry,
except when he's in the Quarian fleet, is he not? He's not captain.
Well, clearly that
Obviously.
was the part of the law that I was referring to.
Jesus, no, actually, according to the comments, I don't know anything about the law. So.
Yeah. So, what would he drink or she drink? She was a she, wasn't she?
He. My Shepard's a dude. Okay. Yeah. Contrary to internet logic, my Shepard is a bloke. But I started playing it before anyone knew about Jennifer Hale. So. I think he would probably drink. Actually, I always in Mass Effect, I would always do whatever little mini game was available to get battered. There's always one like where you can sit and repeatedly drink the same thing in the Citadel. Like Shepard can get properly hammered in Mass Effect 2, and you wake up on the floor of the loos with whoever your squad mates were with you at the time, kind of like nursing you back to health, having to get you back to the ship, which is a nice little aside. You'd probably have a glass of wine, I think. That's a white wine, space wine.
Space wine.
Yeah, like classic
space grapes.
Yeah.
Delicious.
Jumped on by space people. Fermented in space.
Perfect.
Yeah. That'll do. If I think of a better character later, I'll go back to it. Johnny Mr. Waffles. Again, there's a lot of names that I'm not totally convinced people's real names in this. Or it might be Johnny M.R. Waffles. Like M.R. James. Anyway. Are you guys excited about the memory increase in next-gen consoles so they won't hold our PC games back as much?
Yes.
Tom?
Also, yes. Why wouldn't we be?
Yes.
Problem solved.
Yeah, it's from what we've seen so far, it's a reasonable memory increase that should raise the minimum spec for PCs at long last. A good thing.
Very welcome. Yeah.
Garfield Loken asks, do you think we're at the point where video games look better than reality? For example, Crysis 3 Squirrels.
They're
I
pretty
haven't
good
seen them.
squirrels, but I am quite a fan of real world squirrels as well. So
'Cause
they've got a
I
high
figured
bar.
you're our kind of resident woodland animal consultant.
Yeah, yeah. I'd give them 9 out of 10 squirrels for a squirrel.
What?
I don't know.
You'd give them... That's a bad
no.
squirrel trade. 9 or 10 squirrels for a squirrel.
I think. Okay, let's go for nuts in that case. Acorns. What do squirrels eat?
Nuts.
That kind of shit. 9 out of 10.
Okay, so hang on. So this is real squirrels? Are you giving real squirrels 9 out of 10, or are you giving crisis squirrels 9 out of 10?
Oh no! Well, clearly, real squirrels are 100% squirrels, so they automatically get a 10.
But
don't
is
they?
it not possible for a real squirrel to be nonetheless disappointing?
Yes, I suppose it is. I'm taking the kind of the epitome of squirreldom
Okay,
here.
the platonic
actually.
squirrel.
The platonic squirrel, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so taking the platonic squirrel, what is... Describe your platonic squirrel. I'm trying to really deliver on this question, Martin. Don't fight me.
Do you want me to describe it in relation to things that aren't squirrels, or in relation to things that are substandard squirrels?
Both would be ideal, but let's...
In fairness,
I
I've
think-
never
I think
seen
we-
a substandard. I think we're being unfair. I've never seen a substandard squirrel. They've
I
always
think...
been
I don't know. I
maximum.
think you get the sort of nasty little ratty squirrels.
Diseased ones.
Yeah.
Going back to the original question,
Myxomatosis squirrel. Didn't they get myxomatosis?
I think no.
Rabbits.
That's rabbits.
But I do think that games are getting to the point where they can deliver on aesthetics which are every bit as wondrous, if not more so, than the things that one might see in films or other media. And obviously,
Squirrels are one of those things.
squirrels are one of those wondrous things, wondrous experiences.
Can't argue with that.
No. There is a point here about the quality of design and how it's not necessarily tied to photorealism and everything else, but most
Indeed,
squirrels...
well, that's why I
Yeah.
say it's happened now. I don't think we're at a stage of photorealism, but I think we've got to the point where our technology is capable of producing stuff which is aesthetically wondrous. Ages ago, probably, actually.
Yeah. I didn't even know that there were squirrels in Crisis 3 before now.
Well,
How much of a role do they
this
play?
has been an education for all of us, hasn't
Yeah,
it?
it has. I mean, no, I'm seriously asking. Well, what role do the squirrels play? Do they?
I'm
Are
not
they
sure.
important?
Can you? I don't think you. Can you throw them like you could chickens in Crisis
I
1?
hope so.
That would be.
That-
I might
that
have to
would be better
reassess
than reality,
my
'cause
apathy towards this game.
I very rarely am able to
They're very
catch
hard to
squirrels.
catch. Yeah, I once had a friend who caught a squirrel. I was very impressed.
What did she do with it? Or
He just held it. He was very good with animals, like a squirrel whisperer. Anyway, moving on. Keith Baker asks, okay, this is a question about me, so you're going to have to answer it. Chris's phone runs out of power and you're with him on the train. Do you lend him your phone quickly or do you publicly berate him?
Is this a Voight Kampf test type scenario?
I flip him over
For
on his
who?
back.
What would a replicant do? Yes, flip him over on his back in the sun.
I swat him.
You'd swap me.
No, obviously not, because I'm not a replicant. I would obviously lend you my phone if you were suddenly in need of it. I mean, otherwise, the
What if
question doesn't presuppose any actual immediate need for your
Emergency,
phone.
no.
In which case,
I do
you could
tweet a lot
probably
when I'm on the
suffice
train.
without it. Well, I probably wouldn't let you tweet from my phone. No, that would be foolish.
No. Okay.
But I
Tom.
wouldn't publicly berate you either, because I don't really care.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll lend you my phone, man.
Oh, thanks. That's
all right.
much appreciated.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Keith also asks, you've spoken often about your love for TF2. Do pre-order bonuses convince you to pre-order a game just for the TF2 hats, etc.?
No.
No.
No, never been. I mean, actually, of all the things that are pre-order bonuses, TF2 hats do strike me as one of the most desirable. Not particularly because I play TF2, but there is a kind of there's just a kind of irresistible cuteness about the
Yeah,
idea
there's a
of
playfulness
having-
to it, yeah.
But no, because I don't pre-order. Why would I pre-order things?
Yeah,
Again, it's
I don't
pre-ordering it.
pre-order things, so.
Yeah, so
Yeah. Adam Dawes asks, this is an answer it's fairly reasonable to say no to. Have you ever fallen in love with a PC game character? How long did it take you to get over them?
yeah, when I saw Lydia half glitched inside that rock trying to walk out of it, that was when I knew she was the one. No, never.
No, can't say it's happened.
Yeah.
Still waiting for that magic.
Love's a very strong word, which is what I say to all my companion characters.
And in the game.
But I do like spending time with them. Way. Self-burn. Stu Morton says, is Aliens Colonial Marines really as bad as everyone makes out, or is it just a disappointment of the license being wasted? To which I say both, sir. Both. One because of the other. Yes, it is bad. I reviewed it for us. I guess we haven't done a podcast since then. And
No, tell us. Tell us all about it, Chris.
I have done at length. You were both in the office while I was playing it for a lot of the time.
It looked pretty
And
damn bad.
every 5 to 10 minutes when something made me laugh in horror, I would sit up at my desk and say, like, guys, until you take your headphones off, and then I would say something about the game, such as, a man has just said, without irony, me and her used to have a thing. What kind of thing? A sex thing. Or the sterling bits of marine dialogue. I mean, this is the thing, reviewing it, I really didn't want to just lay into it for laughs. You know what I mean? Like, I felt like it's such a crushing disappointment for Aliens fans and for people who like Gearbox games and for people who like shooters in general and just for people at Sega that it's in the context of a formal review, it just wasn't any fun to like mock it too much. But it's so repeatedly dumb in the way it completely undersells the Aliens license by managing to ape it so closely. You know what I mean? It's this weird. It kills Aliens with love. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, there was a story today that's gone out via Kotaku, which we can link to, which suggests that it was made in 9 months after having been sort of passed from Timegate back to Gearbox and blah, 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 blah for years and years and years, which is believable from the finished product. But either way, whoever was responsible for sketching out that narrative, I just utterly question every piece of judgment that said, oh no, the Sulaco has to be in it because the Sulaco was in Aliens. Oh, Hadley's Hope. Yeah, it was nuked. Yeah, it has to be in it because Hadley's Hope was in Aliens. Oh, the derelict ship has to be in because the derelict ship was an alien. Like, there's no reason for any of that stuff when you're writing a piece of follow-up fiction at all. If you look at the original pitches for Alien 3 as a movie, some of them are insane. One of them is it would have taken space on a wooden space station populated by monks, and another one is an action movie led by Hicks. And like, if there's anything that's defined that series, it's continually reinventing itself, not always successfully. But in one very specific case, Aliens, spectacularly successfully. And this is not only a failed attempt to revitalize that series, but it fails for exactly the same reason. For the exact opposite reason that it was originally successful, in that it reinvents nothing. And the things it does invent, like new types of aliens, are dumb. You take the galaxy's deadliest predator and you turn it into a zombie alien, you know.
It's got aliens that self-detonate. What more
that
do you
blows
want?
up if it hears a loud noise. Like, everyone remembers that bit from Aliens, right? Where someone clapped and the alien blew up. Like, oh god. It does have... Speaking of hands clapping, and I said this so many fucking times, but I love a line of dialogue from the first part of that game. So you're on the Sulaco, and you just found out that it's full of aliens for a spectacularly dumb reason, and your companion, Private O'Neill, is kind of weary after a battle, and you're all cheering, whatever, because you just fought off a wave of aliens. To which he responds, "Save the high-fiving for the bedroom, Marines." Thus portraying, as far as I'm aware, a complete misunderstanding of what it is adults do in a bedroom.
I'm always high-fiving.
And this is the same guy who later claims to have a sex thing. To which the only image I have in my head is as of the two of them surreptitiously sneaking out of cryo or whatever to sneak onto the other side of the ship, and then like high-fiving each other in a storage cupboard. Like, it's sweet. Like, a lot of that game is weirdly sweet and innocent, like that. Like the way the aliens are completely non-lethal. Like the ones that aren't, even the normal aliens, the ones that don't explode when they hear a loud noise, rather than being these like deadly predators that are always behind you when you don't want them to be, and who, if they bleed on you, you melt to death. They are these kind of jittery little guys who pop up from vents and then get confused and go back into the vent for a bit and then run around and come up from a different vent.
They look like very excitable dogs.
Yeah, exactly.
That run into you in the field.
But dogs that don't belong to you, and they're a little bit unsure, so they get really close to you and then be like, oh, like I was excited now, but now I don't know anymore. And then they'll go back and then they'll run up a ceiling for a bit. I said this in the review, but like sometimes when you die, it'll do a little hand animation. So you'll in the first person, so you'll see yourself get twisted around by an alien and a mouth inside a mouth thing come and stick you in the brain or whatever. And And that happened to me about 4 hours into Aliens Colonial Marines, and I went, oh, like that, and I jumped backwards. And I used to think aliens were terrifying. Like, I'm a huge fan of the series, as people probably tell by now. But like, and it made me jump, and I was like, oh my god, these things are scary. And then it kind of occurred to me that, hang on, that's how you should feel every time one of these monsters shows up.
Yeah.
Not once as a novelty.
So
Yeah.
how? I mean, obviously, this game not great, possibly not as awful as the kind of career-wrecking hatred that's been.
Yeah, I mean, I
directed
gave
towards
it a 48 for us because that's legitimately where I thought it fell. The multiplayer has some
I've never
interesting
seen
ideas.
a game be so widely vilified as this, and it seems a surprise to me that because there are worse games out there. And
Certainly. There are
almost
far worse shooters.
Never really get the kind of vitriol directed towards it. But what would be? I mean, can you do a little bit of armchair design? What would be the Aliens game that you would want from
Well,
them?
I don't want to paraphrase myself too much from the review, but there are things in Aliens Colonial Marines that suggest the kind of Aliens game you could make. Sequences where you can set up sentry guns around areas, lockdown areas, but you've got limited ammunition on the sentry guns. Feel a lot like Aliens and are interesting. It's sort of like a first-person tower defense kind of thing, which has worked with. I mean, I don't want a first-person tower defense game, but having some of those mechanics of looking at an area and trying to figure out how best, like having to look at an area and think, okay, there's a vent there and a door there, and they'll get through here, and then lock it down according to those kind of your own ability to pass the environment. Like that would make for a good action-based Aliens game. Like throwing out, like everyone in the universe has made the point that a good Alien game should be like a survival horror, like Amnesia or something. Like I do think that's a good idea. I don't think it's been said. If you want to make an action, based game that wasn't like an AVP style shooter, that's how I would do it. Have it be like because the multiplayer tries this in a few different ways. Like have it be about progressing through kind of a series of hub areas, but where the alien attacks are kind of unscripted, and you've got to be aware of where it is possible to get lost, for example, where you're not being led from checkpoint to checkpoint to hack a door panel to hack a door panel, but where it is possible to go the wrong way. And so you've got to be very careful. And where environments are naturally kind of maze-like, whether that's exploring one facility or a spaceship or something, so that you've got to have the potential to screw up in Aliens, right? Because that's one of those defining things about Aliens is that people run the wrong way or get split up. Like, getting split up should be the worst thing that can happen to you. And I don't know whether that makes it necessarily a multiplayer game or a kind of like a squad game or something.
Yeah.
But I think that's how you do it. I think you have to kind of open the scope out and to throw in a bunch of mechanics like welding doors shut, for example. Like imagine that game. So you've got a big level to get to and you've got to achieve something in that level, say a randomly placed objective. But it could be anywhere and aliens can attack from anywhere and at any time. And you can weld doors shut, you can place sentry guns, you can set up barricades, but all of those things could potentially screw you over if you do it wrong. If you weld a bunch of doors shut and suddenly you've got to get back through them, you have trapped yourself in a horror situation. And that's awesome. That's what an Aliens game should be, is feeling like that decision you made 10 minutes ago has just gotten you killed and you can see death approaching because it's, that's what the alien is. Not like that amazing video of the alien playing Hello My Baby as it bugs out in the corner and appears to be playing an tiny little piano.
Yeah, poor dude.
Again, show notes. That's how I would do Aliens game. Make sense?
Yeah, sounds good.
You guys haven't played it, have you?
No. Don't think I will.
I elected not to after
Yeah.
seeing
Yeah.
you play it.
God. Also, I forgot to mention human enemies. Human enemies.
Terrorists.
Basically terrorists. They're not the
Balaclavas.
PMCs.
Secret terrorists with the name of the organisation
On their baseball
caps, yeah.
which they wear over their balaclavas.
Yeah.
Like first day of Wayland Yutani mercenary school is like, make sure to keep make sure he wears balaclava to, so you can't be identified, but here's your stash. You know what I mean? Here's your hoodie with like Class of Wayland Yutani Military Academy 06 on the back. God, everything about that game is dumb. When you even get into the Aliens lore side of it, it makes no sense because it takes place 19 weeks after Aliens. But in that entire universe, it takes years to travel anywhere in cryo. People get into spaceships and they travel for like years, and then they're unpacked 3 years later, which means that the people who follow up on the Marines from the original Aliens must have had to have left years after at the same time. So it's a really good job the other guy sent a distress signal when they were halfway there. Like, when the basic premise of your story is flawed at the first hurdle, you have probably not done this well. Also, no female characters. Well, there's one, but
Does she fly a helicopter?
Oh, actually, there's two. I forgot about woman who is in every way indistinguishable from the pilot from Aliens down to the aviators.
Okay.
I can't really think of any more things to complain about that game. I've complained about it a lot. It's not very good. Don't pre-order games.
Yeah.
Dark asks, finally finished Icewind Dale. Can you guys dig up the score and see if you thought it was as good as I did? We gave it 84%. Back in PC Gamer, 84, I think. Maybe I just said the same number twice, which brings my the score is correct. I don't know if the issue number is. Have you guys played Icewind Dale? 'Cause I haven't.
No, I haven't either, I'm afraid.
Nope.
It was a Infinity Engine, not BioWare, Black Isle, I think. Maybe even Obsidian. One of those other companies that made Infinity Engine RPGs way back when. But apparently we liked it, and so does this gentleman.
Excellent. I'm glad to see another happy customer.
Absolutely.
Retroactively,
Bravo,
good,
sir.
good work.
He
PC.
left about the right amount of time before ordering the game.
Yeah. Good work.
Just
Yeah,
to be sure.
Give it 10 to 15 years, as we've established in this podcast. We can
right.
also recommend that you buy Half-Life 2.
Also quite a good game.
Yeah,
isn't
it's
it?
still the highest review
time has
score
passed.
PC Gamer's ever given. And 12 years on, we're still right. Matt Smith asks, will you guys ever record a podcast on time?
Seems unlikely.
That seems unlikely. Yeah, actually, I probably should have said this at the start, if the start hadn't been such a shambles. But I'm sorry for the delay in the fact that we skipped an issue episode, basically, because we were crazy busy with magazine deadline and web stuff and a bunch of other things all hitting at once. And when that happens, the podcast is what suffers. We will try and we were having talks about trying to set up a much more kind of consistent production schedule so we can get it out at the same time every 2 weeks. But that is not that likely to happen based on the way
We'll see.
we live our lives.
Let's see what happens.
We will continue to make it up as we go along and hope that it improves. But yeah, thank you for bearing with us. The second half of his question is, only kidding, you are awesome. So,
Hooray.
hey.
That's
Nice
nice.
man.
But will Rome 2 be as good as the previews look?
I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
I'm the only one out of
Looks
you two
fierce.
who hasn't actually touched it.
I haven't touched it either.
Oh,
No, it's just me then.
Oh, I see. I thought you are a Rome expert.
Looks very exciting.
So I can probably talk about this now because the issue is out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So PC Gamer 250 has Rome 2 on the cover, which I wrote the feature for that. I went out to Creative Assembly and saw their Teutoburg Forest battle, which is Romans getting wiped out by an ambush of Germanic warriors. And it was the first time I'd seen it. I'd seen the previous demo, the Carthage Chamber, a few times, but this was the first time I saw it actually being played with the interface and everything else. And it looks great. Like, still haven't seen anything of the campaign map, but in the way that the battles are constructed and the way they're staged, it's kind of taken it's from what I've seen, it's taken a lot of the good developments of Shogun and kind of advanced them another step. So the interface is simpler again. All the same information is there, but like your unit cards are just kind of bigger and clearer. It's what's going on, and they kind of shrink like icons on an Apple dock when you get more of them. So they kind of like fold away really neatly, and you can just fold them away entirely if you want, and control the battle using in-game prompts or things that are being rendered in the engine. So they're working a lot harder to communicate information about a unit, like how well it's doing in combat and what state it's in, through the animations of the soldiers and what they're saying to each other, rather than like a little flashing icon that says this unit is taking arrow fire.
Yeah, the old thing was having to mouse over the flags to get their exact.
Like it still says like doing well or pretty
Yeah.
exhausted or shitting themselves or whatever. But you can sort of like there's nice little incidental barks that you hear. If you give an order, you will hear the captain of that cohort give the order to the units he's with, which has been the case in Total War games to an extent. But you'll also hear like situation specific things like "Don't stop to help the wounded" or whatever being shouted as men respond to the fact that they are doing badly, and that's kind of a really nice idea. Also, the major change, and I only found this out, it's a huge thing for Total War, is units now have individual line of sight down to every individual man in the unit. They can only see what they can see, and you can only see what they can see. There's no more kind of abstract battlefield stuff like generals always being visible. You know, in regular Shogun games, there's a star that shows you where the general unit is, and you can always see that, except in certain conditions. That's no longer the case. Line of sight is totally dynamic now, and even a small hill can hide a lot of people. And what that means is that in the right terrain, battles close in much faster, from what I saw, so that you can think you're doing well, and then turn a corner, and there's an army there you just didn't know about. And then you've got to deal with it. So it makes it a much more reactive game. Obviously, open field battles, you'll still have a lot more information going in. But even then, there's potential for deception and ruses and stuff, which I think is a really positive change. One thing they told me was that they tested that at first by adding it to Shogun 2. They basically went and played loads of Shogun 2 multiplayer battles with a kind of hacked-in line of sight system, and it changed the rhythm of it completely, because you spend less time just watching two armies march towards each other from huge different distances. You can spend more time, because the exciting thing happens sort of more suddenly, right? There's none of that kind of inevitability of two armies eventually meeting, because of the line of sight system. Things suddenly change, or can happen, or can appear from nowhere that make the whole thing more exciting. And it's allowed them weirdly to slow down units. They told me that they got to this point with Shogun where it was just too slow to start a battle. Like on a big battlefield, two armies would take a long time to come together. So they ended up just speeding dudes up. So the running pace of an average man in Shogun is equivalent to an Olympic marathon runner. Like they're running at such. If you took their real speed, it's, I don't know what that is. I don't know, 8 miles an hour. I don't know what's good for a marathon runner. No, we're not marathon.
Shows you how often we run.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but they've been able to make it more realistic and slow that down by virtue of being more realistic in other areas by incorporating line of sight and stuff. There's a lot. There's a ton of new information, but I think in the aim of not rambling on forever, I am pretty excited about it. I think they know what they're doing, and they when I saw it, they said they were just going into kind of alpha, like not full alpha testing, but the idea being that they're now ready to just start iterating and testing on ideas. It's not fully asset complete or anything, but it's getting there, which bodes really well, I think, in terms of given that it's due, we don't know when exactly, but late this year, that it should have plenty of time to kind of stew and for some of the weird balance things to work themselves out. But I was impressed. Again, ton of stuff about the campaign as well that is in the feature, but I don't sit here and ramble about Rome for half an hour. So
read the feature.
Yeah. Nor do I want to pointlessly shill for the magazine. But there's a feature in PC Gamer 250 on shelves now, also available digitally. Sorry, I feel a bit ill. Jeremy Peel of PC Games N asks, is it time to admit that every reason Blizzard cited for Diablo 3 being always online that wasn't PC Gamers a pirate was balls?
So he's referring to the recent announcement that the PlayStation version of Diablo 3 will not need a common connection.
Rumour, non-confirmed, I think.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The actual reason is to protect the auction house, really. Such a driving force of the end game that they couldn't possibly risk having it undermined by hackers or anyone copying items or anything like that, because it would have just shattered the entire system instantly. And seemed like a vital thing to protect that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think it's a piracy thing.
I don't think it is either.
Yeah, I think that was a bad bet for them in some ways, the auction house.
I think so, yeah.
If not because, I don't know how much money it's made them, probably won't find out, but it's generated so much ill will towards that game.
Yeah.
I think they probably could have profited more from releasing. Because it's a game we like, that we've enjoyed. And I know you're a fan of it, but it is compromised in the public eye by that feature, and that I think is why they didn't permit offline play.
Yeah, there's a sense where you do a sequel to a much-loved series that you have to nail what's really exciting about it, and shopping is not what's exciting about Diablo. And it's such a shame that became so central. It doesn't become essential until later in the game. You can play through once or twice before you have to use the auction house, and that's still kind of a blast. But it is depressing how the end game has turned out, as I've written about extensively. But yeah, I still really like that game.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think piracy would necessarily have been that concern.
I don't think it is for Blizzard.
Not all of their games are so heavily online connected that...
I think their Battle.net system is actually very good anti-piracy anyway, and they're so Blizzard are so good at controlling their systems, and they're very insular, and they're very. One of the interesting things about their decision to go with PS4 is that they must trust that infrastructure to let them, see their online code and let them see their stuff, because they're very, very protective, and I think they're extremely experienced when it comes to making secure games. And I think that security wouldn't have been a primary concern for them when they were making 003, but for the auction house. And that's surely it, I think.
Martin?
I have nothing else to add to that. That seemed like a very comprehensive answer. Well done, Tom. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Excellent work.
Thank you so much.
Comprehensive. Comprehensive.
That's what I like.
And that's the last Twitter question I've got.
Cool.
On the list of Twitter questions.
Wow.
Our work here is done.
Our work here is done. Thank you for listening, people at home. We actually had another question, which for some reason hasn't made it onto the list, which was where do we recommend listening to the PC Gamer podcast? At
Where,
home or on the
physically?
tube or on the toilet or in
Oh,
bed.
right.
I did have a letter once from a guy who listened to it in bed, which I think I'm okay with.
Yeah.
He's almost certainly listening to this, and I'm okay with that. But
Just have it
only
on,
mostly
on repeat at all times without break.
Yeah.
So you go to the toilet and then you also go and
Pump
make dinner.
a tannoy in every part of your house.
So yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
When you're out with your girlfriend, then to just have one earbud in. And the other
I would actually get rid of I would go for speakers.
ghetto blaster on the shoulder.
Yeah,
So
like above your head, outside the bedroom window.
yeah. That's ideal. Absolutely.
I think we've exhausted the possibilities there, really.
Yeah, I think we have.
Yeah.
Both of that and of this and of us.
I can't believe I just said the word ghetto blaster. Anyway.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.